reunited with ex-cop Brian Dennehy in FX2. And Detective Michael Keaton is torn between going on the take and remaining one good cop. It's all coming up next on Siskel and Ebert.
Take this. Okay, listen to me. You go out there. I'll take a 2 count, and I'm right behind you.
That's Michael Keaton as a beleaguered police detective in the drama One Good Cop, one of the new movies we'll be reviewing this week on Siskel and Ebert, along with a look at the newly reconstructed revival of Spartacus with Kirk Douglas. I'm Gene Siskel of the Chicago Tribune.
And I'm Roger Ebert of the Chicago Sun-Times. Our first movie is named One Good Cop, but a good cop is the one thing the hero of this movie is not. And the screenplay's attempts to make him seem like one are a torturous exercise in double talk. The movie stars Michael Keaton and Anthony LaPaglia as partners on the New York police force. They're called into a hostage situation. A dopehead has threatened to kill his wife and children, and that drives LaPaglia crazy because he has lost his own wife and is raising 3 daughters by himself.
That's his wife. He's been pulling her around back and forth, sticking that cannon in her face. She's scared to death.
It's always the wife who gets the worst of it.
The partner rushes the druggie and is shot dead, and the main story in the movie involves a decision by Keaton and his wife, played by Renee Russo, to try to adopt the 3 orphan kids and raise them as their own.
Aunt Rita?
Aunt Rita's not here right now. I was just looking for some shoes under there.
We forgot to say goodnight to you, Uncle Artie.
Oh.
As part of his job, Keaton confronts a local drug dealer who he knows is making thousands of dollars a day selling dope to people exactly like the man who killed his partner.
Oh, look at me as your personal policeman, all right? From now on, whenever you turn around, I'll be right there.
Then Keaton makes a deliberate decision to become an outlaw by stealing 200 grand from the drug dealer, giving some of it to a local mission, and using the rest to buy a nice family home in the Bronx so they'll have a big enough place to raise the kids.
Now, let me ask you something, Rita. You think it's fair some low-life dirtbag has millions of dollars when other people can't put a roof over their heads?
The drug dealer figures out who stole his money and strikes back, leading to the big violent scene at the end of the film with Keaton and an undercover cop, played by Rachel Ticotin, shooting it out with the dope dealers.
Look what this pig did to me!
He's loose!
Now, even if I didn't object to the morality of One Good Cop, which I do, I still wouldn't be enthralled by this movie, which depends on surprise developments that we can see coming a mile away, and which has a lot of very complicated dialogue trying to justify the fact that this cop has broken the law. What really bothered me was that the movie wants the Keaton character to get away with it, to escape all punishment, even after the entire police department discovers what he did, and the FBI knows too. The movie argues in favor of cops taking the law into their own hands, and it makes the classic moral error of believing that the end justifies the means. If people really believe that, we wouldn't have much of a civilization left.
I'll take the film on a more pedestrian level. I mean, I think that it just starts to plead so that it's grabbing you by the lapels and saying, cops have it awful, they have a tough life, and look what happens. And he has to take into the family these 3 kids, and one of them has diabetes and all this sort of stuff. I mean, they really lay it on thick. And my response is, number one, I already knew that cops have it tough. This movie isn't related specifically to the problems cops have. Any person who has to take over and take in another family of 3 kids, anybody who has a child that has a medical problem, you know, make it specific to cops. Just don't lay all this stuff in on the cops. It's really
You're right, because a lot of people have problems like this, but only the cop has the gun and the badge that allows him to abuse the public trust by going in there and stealing that money. That is illegal for him to do, no matter how the money was gained.
Okay.
You ought to bust the drug dealer, not steal the drug dealer's money.
And, of course, it's insulting to police officers.
Sure it is.
They wouldn't do that normally. I mean, it's
Including
cornball.
the fact that right up to the end when we find out the whole police department is behind him, so that everyone, agrees that he should have done this.
Yeah, a film that would like to honor police, really, I don't think does.
Yeah.
Okay, our next movie is a true disaster, FX2, a lifeless, overcomplicated, thoroughly boring sequel to the surprise 1986 hit about a movie special effects artist who uses his craft to aid the police. Brian Brown again stars as the special effects guy who has rigged a bathroom to record a killer's attack. But the cop acting as the decoy there is killed. And so now the same killer is after Brian Brown and his tape of the attack.
How do you know I didn't make a copy?
Did you?
No, I wish I had.
Never fear, Brian Brown just happens to have a remote-controlled clown standing by, a ridiculous little bonus that is typical of this overstuffed movie. Later on, the killer is chasing Brown and his girlfriend, again played by Rachel Tickerton, and her son through a supermarket. What to do? No problem for a special effects guy. Just light up a few cans of deadly baked beans.
It's locked. Damn.
Oh, on this job, you get to see it all. I mean, now, what's the theory there? That the beans are just going to scare him? I mean, they're not going to kill him, right? Because he bounces right
They're
back
going to
up.
distract him while the woman and her child try to race out of the supermarket.
How
but
about just yelling,
the doors are locked.
How about yelling, the store is closing in 5 minutes? I think that would distract him. There is a plot, however, to this mess of special effects involving a crooked cop and some drug dealers. But ultimately, what FX2 is about, as you can see from these clips, is deception of the characters and of us in the audience. So that the moment you think something has happened, it really hasn't. And the filmmakers could say, fooled you. Well, that gets annoying very quickly, like a little kid with a cheap magic trick he keeps performing over and over and over.
You know, as I was watching this movie, I realized it fell into the category of what I call the "but what about" movie. You know, like, but what about this? But what about that? Because every single thing that happened raised logical questions that the movie had no answer for. For example, Gene, just at random, I don't know how many helicopter flights you've taken.
One.
One. Did you check out the pilot before you got in? Would you have noticed if it was Bozo the Clown?
Because of the little clown.
Maybe, yeah, because remember he gets in the helicopter and it's Bozo the robot at the controls. I mean, I would notice a thing like that. I would say, I'm going to take the next helicopter. And throughout the movie, there are all kinds of the most enormous gaps in logic and incredulity. By the end of the film, I almost wanted to like it just because it was so transcendentally goofy. You know?
It's not a guilty pleasure. No, it's just a bad film.
Okay, coming up later, the restored version of Stanley Kubrick's 1960 epic Spartacus. And coming up next, Switch, a Blake Edwards comedy about a man who literally finds himself trapped inside a woman's body.
There's not much you wouldn't look good in. I bet you say that to all the boys who become girls.
It's me, Walter. It's me. I'm a woman.
Who is it? Connie? Is this Connie?
No, it isn't Connie. It's me. Okay, forget it. Forget it. I'm a man. I'm Amanda.
The woman claiming she's really a man in a woman's body there is played by Ellen Barkin, but earlier in Switch, a new comedy by Blake Edwards, the character really was a man, a male chauvinist pig named Steve, in fact. Then Steve dies and goes to heaven and is given one last chance to avoid eternal damnation. Heaven sends him back to Earth as a woman to see what it feels like to be the victim of a pig like himself, and also to see if he can find one earthly woman who will love him. Most of the women in Steve's life learn to hate him, so imagine his feelings now that he's in a female body and confronting one of his old girlfriends, played by Jo Beth Williams.
The way I figure it, Margot, you'd have no trouble believing that I am the late, great Stephen Brooks, your ex-lover, reincarnated as a gorgeous female. Look deep, Margot.
Here's a really tricky scene. Barkin is drinking with Jimmy Smits, who was her best friend when she was a man.
Well, to tell you the truth, I really want to go to bed with you.
Oh, and that's a hot news flash. Oh, bottom drawer. No, I looked there.
The best scenes in the movie, like this one, are about the different body language and verbal styles of the two sexes.
Can't think with all this hair. Beautiful hair. You know how long it takes to dry this hair? Get me my barber. Your barber?
Barkin is good there. You know, a man really does take his coat off like that, and there's a lot to like in Switch, but not quite enough, I'm afraid, to recommend it. I did enjoy the performances, especially Barkin acting like a man trying to act like a woman. She was funny, even though the gags about the high-heeled shoes went on way too long. But what disappointed me was the reluctance of the filmmaker, Blake Edwards, to really push his premise to see how far it would go. He's always leading us up to a shocking or scandalous situation, only to weasel out of it. For example, when the former man makes love to his or her old pal, for example, Edwards is careful to explain that they were both drunk and didn't know what they were doing. But if a scene like that had been played straight so that the former male inside a female body knows what he's doing, it could have had limitless complications, not only philosophically, but comically. Switch is a good idea, and I wish Edwards had gone all the way with it.
Well, I would have liked that, too. I think that the film takes us up to those encounters, at which point we can race ahead in our minds and feel some of the conflicting things that are set up in a situation like that. So I don't think you're being a little too tough. The other thing is that I think Ellen Barkin's performance is not just good. I think it's really spectacular. You can't catch her acting falsely, except what she's required to do, and you're right about the shoes, where she's stumbling around. That is too much. I think this is on the level of Steve Martin's work in All of Me. Really, this is worthy of an Oscar nomination. I think the picture should be seen for what she does. And I got into some of the issues, even though, as you said, it could have gone tougher.
Yeah, but he's always hedging his bets. For example,
I wanted to see that stuff. I'm with you in that.
There's the scene where the man inside the woman's body is approached by a lesbian.
Right.
But as his friend explains to him, the reason you weren't turned on is that you're homophobic. And so even though you always were attracted to this woman, now that you realize she's a lesbian, you can't...
I know what you're saying.
You know. And that isn't, you see, when you do that, it's an excuse to avoid what could have really come out of that situation involving sexual identity.
I think, though, that the way you describe it, and you can even remember it, I think indicates that the issue was brought home to you. Not as fully as you want to.
I can remember it because the issue wasn't brought home to me. That's what I can remember. Coming up next, Spartacus, the 1960 epic winner of 4 Academy Awards. It's been restored, but is it worth seeing again?
They will fight now for me. Here, and to the death. Spartacus. You are he.
That's Laurence Olivier as an evil Roman tyrant confronting Kirk Douglas, the leader of a slave revolt, in a scene from Spartacus from 1960. And along with Lawrence of Arabia, Spartacus is considered a thinking man's epic film, the story of a Roman slave played by Douglas who wants freedom for his brothers in bondage. This film had been chopped by censors before its original release. Some of its original negatives were destroyed, but now it has been lovingly restored to its original length by the same experts who saved Lawrence of Arabia. And when I first saw this movie at age 14, I liked the battle scenes more than the love story. Seeing it now as a 45-year-old, just the opposite reaction, preferring the genuinely romantic scenes between Kirk Douglas and Gene Simmons as the slave who loves him.
Why don't you kiss me? This is the first time I was ever going to have a baby.
Composer Alex North has contributed a sweet melody for their love affair. Also most entertaining, Peter Ustinov, an Oscar winner for his supporting performance as the droll, conniving slave dealer who buys Spartacus.
11 miles through this disastrous heat, and the cost of hiring an escort, ruinous.
The battle scenes as Spartacus leaves the slaves against the Roman army are justifiably famous. Director Stanley Kubrick, then just 31 years old, displaying here an eye for spectacle. One controversial scene that was cut from the original release of the movie and is now restored is the infamous oysters and snails scene with the bisexual Roman nobleman Crassus, Laurence Olivier, inquiring about the sexual preferences of a slave played by Tony Curtis. Because Olivier is dead, Anthony Hopkins from Silence of the Lambs dubbed Olivier's voice in this scene.
Do you eat oysters?
When I have them, master.
Do you eat snails?
No, master.
Do you consider the eating of oysters to be moral and the eating of snails to be immoral?
No, master.
Of course not. It is all a matter of taste, isn't it?
Spartacus does hold up upon second viewing, and in comparison with today's movies, with scenes like that, it seems so much more adult, with mature actors playing fully grown men and women with wit and passion and ideas, and sometimes even a world-weary attitude toward life. Today, it seems we're watching mostly boys and girls, and I do recommend strongly seeing Spartacus again. Didn't that impress you?
I liked it. I think it's a good epic, but not a great epic. It's not up there with Lawrence of Arabia.
No, I don't
I'll tell you what,
so.
I liked Olivier, I liked Kirk Douglas, I liked Charles Lawton, and I really enjoyed Peter Ustinov, who steals the movie just as he did 30 years ago. Every one of his scenes is a little jewel. The thing that I really liked, I think admired the most about this movie that you wouldn't find today is it doesn't end in total victory for Spartacus. It ends with the victory of his idea that slavery is wrong, and that's a bittersweet ending, and it's all the audience is going to get instead of the triumphant hero in a very simple-minded victory.
I think there's another thing. With the age, it seems, I'd have to go back and check it, but the age of the players and the way they carried themselves seems to be so much more adult than today. Today, it would be cast with young, you know, it'd be young, vigorous, Sylvester Stallone, Arnold Schwarzenegger, battle of death, and that sort of thing, and it would seem more of a kid show than an adult show.
I was happy to see it again. When we come back, Drowning by Numbers, a very odd film by the director of The Cook, the Thief, his wife, and her lover.
You're under investigation. Whatever for? For procuring pornography, maybe child abuse.
Our next movie is named Drowning by Numbers, and the title is an exact description of what this movie is about. It stars three women, a grandmother, a mother, and a niece, who have all got exactly the same name, Sissy, and who all drown their husbands while every one of the numbers from 1 to 100 appears somewhere on the screen. Here's a taste of the film. Sissy number 1, played by Joan Plowright, has drowned her husband and is trying to talk the coroner into covering up the crime.
He drowned in his bath due to excessive drinking?
Unlikely. Even in the most disadvantageous circumstances, human beings have an almost involuntary desire to stay alive.
What's the answer, then?
What's the reward?
Reward?
Yes. What do I get for writing out a death certificate that says death caused by drowning after heart attack?
And here's a scene in which Sissy number 3, played by Jolie Richardson, runs into some carefully numbered dead cows.
Oh, cows.
Okay, cows number 78 and 79. They're about 80% of the way through the movie, as I recall. Now, what can I say about this film? I guess I can begin by telling you it's visually very beautiful, a series of compositions with the quality of landscape studies or still lives. I can continue by promising you that in Drowning by Numbers, you will indeed see several people drown, and you will be able to count the numbers from 1 to 100. But will you be able to make any sense out of the movie? I don't think so. It's a deliberate exercise in absurdity, directed by Peter Greenaway, the same man who made last year's The Cook, the Thief, his wife, and her lover. And I'm tempted almost to recommend the film simply because if you think you might find it intriguing, I don't want to discourage you, but to be honest, I personally didn't find it that intriguing, not after about number 44.
You know, the numbers bothered me, too. At a certain point, they take over your ability to enjoy the movie on your own terms. It's like he keeps dictating, you know, a little gag every time. I think what the film is supposed to be about is somehow that how we can all survive in the face of constant death occurring. So you get that point, but then the numbers stick there, and I think it's a little bit of a one-joke picture.
Well, one of the things I would like to have would be a copy of the screenplay, because at the beginning, when the girl is jumping rope and reciting that long poem, I would almost be willing to bet you that she describes every single one of the 100 scenes in the movie in her poem, and it's almost as if within the poem itself contains the key to everything else that happens, as if she's a magician somehow who wills it to happen.
It's different, but not, I don't think, worth spending time with. Coming up next, our video pick of the week, another good movie with Ellen Barkin, one you probably haven't seen. In honor of Ellen Barkin's terrific work in the comedy Switch, I've got another fine performance of hers on home video to recommend. This one, emotional miles apart from the comedy of Switch. It's a tough 1989 thriller called Johnny Handsome, directed by Walter Hill, with Mickey Rourke playing a deformed young criminal who tries to get the man who framed him after Rourke has his face reworked in prison. Barkin plays the evil girlfriend of the film's bad guy who won't let Mickey Rourke escape his past. She is pure evil in this film, deliciously so, and her increasing popularity now is another reason to recommend Johnny Handsome, a terrific, raunchy throwback to the tough B films of the 40s and one of the most underappreciated movies of recent years. You might want to check this one out on home video. Now let's recap the movies we reviewed on this show. 2 thumbs down for One Good Cop with Michael Keaton in a totally misguided attempt to honor the tough work policemen do. 2 more thumbs down, way down, for FX2, a brainless sequel full of annoying gadgets. A split vote on Blake Edwards' Switch, the sex change comedy with Ellen Barkin. Roger wished that the film had gone farther in its sexual exploration. I thought that Barkin's performance was more than enough to recommend the movie. We both recommend you take another look, however, at Spartacus, the Roman slave epic that has been restored. It's opening at theaters around the country. And 2 thumbs down for Peter Greenaway's Drowning by Numbers, a film that is more cute than compelling. So I like Spartacus and Switch.
Spartacus and Citizen Kane are both playing around the country right now. 2 real good revivals. That's it for this week. Next week, we'll be back with reviews of Backdraft with Kurt Russell and Robert De Niro as big city firefighters, and Madonna, Truth or Dare, the controversial film of Madonna's Blonde Ambition concert tour. That's next week, and until then, the balcony is closed.